Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you. This is an honor to be here among so many distinguished speakers today. So as sir introduced us, I'm Sai and this is my partner Nupur. And we are here from a small diabetes community that we like to call Club One. So this is us. We're www.club1diabetes.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube. Please check us out in your free time. So what is Club One? So we're a small community made of diabetics type 1. We have a few type 2s. We have our support systems, our caregivers, our families, friends, doctors, everyone who loves us, and we're all a part of Club One. And we are an online and an offline platform where we have content that is based on very real and very experience-based type 1 diabetes and general diabetes content. So that's us, Club One.
We are very thankful to our mentors, Dr. Yajnik and Dr. Jog, who are here today. And a huge thank you to the KEM Diabetes Unit and the HRC team for really hand-holding us and babysitting us through the last year, over a year now.
So that's us, the KEM babies. And we're here to tell you our story. So, what are you looking at? So a year ago, when we started spending time at the KMDU with our doctors and our DU team, Nupur and I started reading extensively about diabetes, and that was the time that we came across some of the literature by this 90-plus-year-old diabetic physician called Dr. Bernstein. Now, Dr. Bernstein's Diabetes Solution is a very famous book. A lot of you in the crowd must have read it. Have you? How many of you have heard of Dr. Bernstein? Okay, mildly famous. So Dr. Bernstein's book had a few things that really resonated with Nupur and me. One is that he said what turned around his entire fight with his glycemic control and his complication reversal and all of that was that he was able to normalize his blood glucose range throughout the day. So he was able to maintain near normal blood sugars throughout the day, and that for us was really, really mind-blowing. And he said that he achieved this by significantly lowering his intake of carbohydrates in his daily diet. So Nupur and I thought, wow, and we were encouraged by our doctors. So we tried this little experiment that we call the Libre experiment. So this is our 3-day eating data. We had exactly the same food for breakfast, lunch and dinner. And over 3 days, we marked our Libre readings, and we were very surprised with the results. So a few things came out. That is that the differences were Nupur needed significantly lower doses of insulin for the same amount of food than I did. So you can see quickly that for the same food, where I needed 2 units, she needed 0.5. Where I needed 4 or 6 units, she needed 2, and so on and so forth. So that was very surprising because we were both around the same age group and we've both been diabetic for 23 years. And the common factors were that for the 3 days, we were almost always in range. And both of us, of course, were taking X and Y amounts of insulin. So my insulin consumption dropped down straight up by 20%. I think Nupur also experienced a similar drop. And you can see the proof is in the pudding. So the first few days we started seeing that our roller coasters started coming closer to recognizable levels. So this was our first day data.
Now this is a picture shot on, now we are the smartphone generation. This is a picture shot on our smartphones of the food that we make at home and eat. And this is not specifically food that we wanted to photograph. It just turned out to be, looking this way. And so really, what is low carb? Is it some sort of deprivation? Is it some kind of thing where you're not allowed to eat a huge list of things? That's not really true. As you can see, there's a wide variety of food that we eat and enjoy. And it's definitely one of those things that's turned out to be very sustainable and very, very helpful for us and for our blood sugar control. Right. So I think in a sense, for those of us, and it's like a refresher for all of us actually. So what really is a low carb diet? Low carb is something where you eliminate grains, sugar, starch, and per Dr. Bernstein, we limit our carbohydrate content per day to 30 grams. So that automatically eliminates a certain food group, which we had some kind of, a slight adjustment period, but that really worked out beautifully on our sugars, as you can see.
So, if you can see, this is a classic example, Nupur.
Yes, so on the left, the flat line that you see is a type 1 diabetic blood sugar. Both of these are our graphs. And on the left is when we ate low carb. Of course, we bolused for it, we took insulin for it. But the insulin and the food matched so beautifully that our blood sugars have been in non-diabetic range for about 24 hours. Whereas on the right-hand side, we decided to experiment because, we love experimenting, and had some appams. And that very day, we had quite the roller coaster of blood sugars. So what really happens here is that now we've been type 1 diabetic for 23 years. We've been at carb counting, we've been at insulin dosing, we've been really focused on our diabetes management, but in many senses we've been failing. What we realized is there's something called the law of small numbers. A small input of carbohydrates results in a small input of insulin, which results in a small variability. And variability is something that we're trying to eliminate. What we want is a more predictable blood sugar. We do not want the roller coaster of highs and lows. We really want a blood sugar that's as non-diabetic as anybody else.
So now, since it's proof day, we're going to show you more of our reports. This is my HbA1c when I was a carbivore, as they call it. I was having my appam and my dosa. So you can see I had a 7.5. which is not terrible, but it had a lot of scope for improvement. And after I changed, so I'm on a moderate low carb diet, which means that I consume about 50 to 80 grams in an entire day, give or take. And Nupur is on a classic low carb diet, which is about 30 grams of carbohydrates plus minus 10%. So this is after I started a moderate low carb diet. My HbA1c started dropping gradually and I was almost always in range. But Nupur's results with her 30 grams and lower was a little more stunning.
So we're looking at my HbA1c report from 2016 October, which was when I wasn't on low carb. My HbA1c at that point in time was 6.3, which is what most would consider pretty acceptable for a type 1 diabetic over 20 years. However, this 6.3 is really not indicative of a 24-hour graph being really flat. So as we all know, an HbA1c is an average of blood sugars over roughly 90 days. This obviously had a lot of highs and lows. I had a lot of peaks and valleys on my high carb phase. In the next report, which I actually got done last week, I had a lab draw last week. This is on 2nd of February. My HbA1c is 5.2. Now, 5.2 is a non-diabetic range. You may wonder, was Nupur permanently in hypo to have an HbA1c of 5.2? Well, that's not true either, because over a 90-day period, I had roughly 2% hypos. So what really got me there was the help which I had with low carb.
So as you can see, all these slides that we showed you was a classic explanation of the very famous principle that Sir has given to the world, the Y-Y paradox. Different metabolisms and different responses. But the commonalities that we took home from our low carb experiment was that both of us had a remarkably lower insulin consumption from our original start point. So to give you a perspective, I took about 80-90 units of insulin a day to stay in range earlier. But when I came to moderate and not even entirely low carbs, I've cut it down to about 50-55 units of insulin in a day, which is a very, very significant reduction. And when you add any other thing like exercise and oral hypoglycemics, that number goes even lower. So I think one small change is what has had a domino effect in the way our glycemic control has come about. More proof.
So like Sai mentioned, she had a drastic reduction in her insulin. The same happened with me. I went from about 30-32 units a day total daily dose to about 15 units now. I'm a full-grown adult in front of you. I have my beta cells really don't work at all. My C peptide shows that, and I use 15 units. So what's really complemented is again, low carb. So the proof is in the low carb pudding. That's us. We did another experiment because, well, we
Because
find
we're
it
with Sir.
yes, and we find it quite fun. So we got our DEXA scans done for 2017 and 2018 under both our doctors' guidances, Dr. Yajnik and Dr. Job. Now, what you see on the left is my DEXA scan from 2017. My body fat at that point in time was 37.9%, and about 11 months later, my body fat has gone down to 26%. I also lost about 10 kilos of weight. And again, well, just to give you some perspective, I've been an amateur athlete for several years. I run marathons. Marathons are races where you run 42 kilometers. I've also run ultra marathons. So it's not like I wasn't exercising, I was exercising, but I was still struggling with my weight. Whereas the last year has been really busy for me, I unfortunately haven't been able to exercise as much. A slight change in the diet, a slight change in the way of eating, and my body fat has gone down 10%.
My results, of course, I was moderate low carb, I cycled back and forth, so they aren't as impressive as Nupur's. I only lost about 3%. I think I came down from like a 39 to like a 36. But I did lose about 4 kilos. So I think that was our takeaway. So I think when we looked at our start points and our lifestyles, I think we couldn't deny the fact that eating low carb made such a huge difference in our lives. So now we're coming to the most essential aspect of all of this. That is, so okay, eating low carb is good. Your blood glycemic levels improve, your insulin dependency reduces, all of that is great. Is it sustainable? Can you do this every day? Is it practical? I'm going to tell you honestly, it's a struggle because I think the biggest thing about changing any way of eating from what you're used to what you want to do, you have to deal with a mindset issue. Normal eating comes with a certain format. I mean, all of us have this concept in our head that you feel sated, you feel full, or you feel complete only if you eat chapati or rice with a certain amount of dal and a certain amount of vegetables. So if you're able to change that, if you're able to wrap your head around alternate ways of eating, and if you're open to that possibility, in time you will find that yes, it works for you, yes, it's easy, and yes, it's sustainable. But then there's another clincher. Is it affordable?
Every food, whether you buy a Lamborghini or a Mercedes or you buy a Maruti 800, there are always options. So it's the same with the kind of food that we pick. There are very expensive ingredients available if you decide to go low carb, but it's the same with high carb food. As for me, I really don't want to waste a lot of money on just buying fancy ingredients and having less output. I manage within my budget. I don't really spend a lot of money, and I know it's the same with Sai.
That's true.
Yeah,
if you don't eat quinoa and Swiss cheese, every kind of diet is sustainable. Eat fresh, eat wholesome. And so I guess what we're not trying to tell you is go home and like change your lives and overhaul it and throw your carbs down the toilet. No, please don't do that. But change one aspect of how you eat. Change one major aspect of how you eat. Do one change for yourself and see how it's changed your life, see how it's impacted your diabetes, and you will be motivated to stick with something like this. So if you see a good thing, and if you hear any good thing today from all the wonderful speakers, let that stay with you. Make the change. I don't know if time permits, but this is a lovely testimonial from one of our Club One moms, Dr. Kripa Mantri.
She's right there in
She's
the
right
audience.
there. Oh, Som's mom. Hi. So she had talked about how she made one change in one of our campaigns and how that changed the game in their house. I hope, okay, I think we're having some.
So while Sai fixes this, what I'm going to tell you is that a short backstory of what really happened before we play that video. So very recently, about 8-10 days ago, we went for a trek to Sinhagad. A bunch of us, type 1s, and Krupa and her son Soham as well. So this was the first time that she and her son had trekked all the way to the top of Sinhagad, which was a huge achievement. It was my first time at Sihagar as well. We had a very successful trek, wonderful experience. And at the top of the fort, when we reached the top, little Soham sat on the tree, and his mom, she sat below the tree, and we filmed a little video of the two of them, where she told us about how little changes make a big difference. And she talks about how eliminating potatoes slowly from the house has made a considerable difference. So like Sai mentioned, these are small steps, but these are steps that have to be taken at some point. So there might be pushback from family, there might be a little bit of resistance from, friends, family, neighbors, elders. As long as you know what you're doing is right, like Krupa and Soham and their family did, really sky is the limit. You can really get there.
Okay, if it's not working, then
Okay,
don't
no problem.
try it.
So sorry about that. We really gave you a gist of what happened in the video.
Yeah.
Thank
But
you.
anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And what I really have learned over years